Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is that of Kristin Smart, and it has recently been in the news, so hopefully, maybe finally after 25 years, this case will soon be solved. Fingers crossed. This case was suggested by Joe, so thank you for that. I appreciate any suggestions you guys have, and if you have any more, please do let me know. Kristin Denise Smart was born on the 20th of February in 1997 to parents Denise and Stan in Augsburg. And I apologise if I've said that wrong, because I probably have. She also had a brother and a sister, with Kirsten being the eldest. During her childhood, her entire family moved to Stockton, which is in California. Kirsten was a very adventurous and just such a positive person to be around. She was the kind of person that knew what she wanted in life and just went for it. She went to Lincoln High School and she graduated there in 1995. In 1996, she went to California Polytechnic State University, which is also known as Cal Poly, and that's in San Luis in Obispo, California. So obviously going to university, she decided that she was going to move out there, but she would still stay very close to her family. She would contact them like every day, if not every other day. It was always very frequent. She stayed in touch with them all the time, kind of thing. She was also very social with tons of friends who, again, she stayed in contact with. It was normal for her to be in contact with everyone around her. On the 24th of May in 1996 is when this case begins, and it was actually Memorial Day weekend, which is often a 3-day sort of event, and a lot of people travel home for it. If they're at university and things, they go home and spend the 3 days with them. But Kirsten instead was not spending it with her family. She was going to stay in university, and she was just had all these fun things planned with her friends. And it was something she was really excited about, you know. She was looking forward to doing all these things that they planned. She'd also planned to go to a frat house birthday party that weekend with her friends. It was one of her friends' birthday parties, I believe, and it was off campus, and they were going to all go and celebrate that. And that was on the Friday, and before she left, she called her mum and actually ended up leaving a voicemail because her mum didn't answer the phone. And in this voicemail, she told her that she had some very exciting news to tell her, and that she would call her like the next day on the Saturday, because she couldn't get in touch with her and she needed to tell her this really exciting thing. So as I said, this party was off campus. It was in a frat house called Kappa Chi, and it was Kristin and her 3 main friends that were going to it. But then her 3 main friends decided that they didn't actually want to go, but Kristin still did. And it's not like she was attending a party where she didn't know anyone. There would still be people there that she knew, just not obviously her closest friends. And apparently it bummed her out a little bit that her friends weren't going. Obviously she wanted to spend the night with them and have a good fun time at the party with her best friends. But it wasn't like she wasn't going to go because they weren't either. She really wanted to go, and she was very social, and so there would be other people she knew there. It didn't bother her that much. She still wanted to go. And of course, at parties, there is normally a lot of alcohol. Sometimes drugs could be involved, things like that. People get very, very drunk, and this is the main reason as to why we don't really know what she did there. Obviously, she had a good time or whatever, but we just don't know the ins and outs of it, kind of thing, because some people say that she was drunk, others say that she wasn't, and I mean, I'm pretty certain that she was drunk with what happened. It's just people are saying different things at this party. What happened, nobody really knows, because they were very, very drunk. So it gets to 1 AM, which is the next day, the 25th of May, and Kristin is actually passed out on the lawn outside, again, probably because she was very drunk. And a girl called Cheryl Anderson was the one that found her. Now, Cheryl decides to go inside and see whether any friends are around so that they could take her home. But when she goes inside, there's no one really around, and she cannot see anyone like that she would associate with being a good friend. And so she decides that she's actually going to take her home herself. And so she goes inside. She finds the help of a guy called Tim Davis, and they decide that together they're going to help her get home. So they help her to her feet. They begin walking home, and then another guy who was at the party decides that he's going to actually join them and help them, called Paul Flores. So all 3 of them begin to head back to the dorms. So they said that Kirsten was able to walk, but she was very much leaning on Paul. So, she was supporting herself a lot from him. And she was actually a lot taller than him as well. She was 6'1", so she's like hunched over, kind of putting a weight on him. And when the four of them get to the recreational centre, this is when Tim sort of veers off from the group. He has packed his car close by, and so he has to go and get that. So he leaves the other two to take Kristin home. And I mean, all of them lived in different dorms, so they were all going to have to separate at some point anyway. Cheryl said that she would often stop a lot to try and stabilize herself and things like that, and therefore that would kind of leave her and Paul lagging behind. But then Paul would say to Cheryl, like, you know, we'll catch up, and she wasn't allowing that. She did not want to leave them too far behind, and so she just waited for them. She said that she felt a little bit odd. When they get about 9 minutes away from the dorms, they come to sort of an end where Cheryl's dorm is closer if she veers off, and obviously she then does that. She leaves Kristin in the care of Paul, who lived in a dorm that was closer. Again, they weren't in the same one, but his were closer, and so she left him to carry on walking. Paul said that he walked her up until sort of the split off for where he would go to his dorm, and then he watched Kristin walk off, sort of heading towards her dorm, and that was the last that he saw of her. Little did anyone know that would be the last time they saw Kristin again. The next day, she didn't call her mum like the plan had been to do so, and she just figured, you know, she's busy. It was Memorial Day weekend. She's probably been out drinking. She's with her friends. She's partying. You know what I mean? She didn't think too much of it and wasn't too worried. Instead, she just figured she'll ring her the next day, but that call never came. Her friends also could not get a hold of her, and so they figured that she was hungover, you know, she sort of was sleeping in, something like that. But when they didn't hear anything off of her all Saturday and then Sunday, they did get worried, and so they went to her dorm advisor to see whether they could open the door and check whether Kristin was in there, but the dorm advisor refused to do that. On Monday the 27th, Kristin's roommate actually came back. So obviously she had gone probably to visit family or friends or something for Memorial Day weekend, and she was back on the Monday. And when she got in the dorm, she knew something was wrong straight away, because everything of Kristin's was exactly how it had been left on the Friday. So nothing had been touched really. It looked like it hadn't been lived in for the past 2 days. She figured something was wrong. So she reports it to the university sort of police department thing that they had on campus. And initially they figured that she had gone away for the Memorial Day weekend like a lot of people had, even though people knew that that wasn't Kristin's plans, and obviously she was seen on that Friday. And the problem with this was that it meant that Kristin wouldn't actually be reported as missing as soon as she should have been, really. Like, they tried, but, you know, people just figured that, the police figured that she just had gone away, even though that wasn't the case. Kristin's mother, again, was waiting for her to call. She was waiting on that Monday for the phone call, and then when her phone rings, naturally she thinks it's her daughter, but it wasn't. It was actually the police trying to find out if she was there or not, which of course she wasn't. That was when her parents knew immediately that something was wrong. So Kristin's dad goes down to the campus and he's trying to look for her, he's trying to ring her. It was a 250-mile drive, and he made his way down there. He put missing persons posters. He literally was asking everyone and anyone that he could to see whether they had seen his daughter. He also tried to convince the police to open a missing persons case, because he knew that Kristin would not just vanish and not contact anyone. It was completely out of character for her. She always stayed in regular contact. She would have, if she was going to go somewhere, she would have told them, and you know, they didn't know anything, so there was something wrong. They had to wait 3 days before she was finally classed as a missing person, and then a missing persons report was finally done for her. And it was stated by her roommate and her friends that there was nothing missing from her dorm, so there was no money or anything like that missing, and that everything was still there. Police had, again, wondered whether she had just wandered off or something like that. You know, a lot of people do just run away. But there had not been any sightings of Kristin after that Friday night, after she was last seen with Paul. So they began doing searches everywhere. The family was out looking for her. Friends were all out looking for her. They did everything they could to try and track the movement over, you know, that Friday and what possibly could have happened after. They had rewards being raised for information, just literally anything that they could do to try and find out what happened to her. And tips began pouring in. People were saying that they'd seen her here, there and everywhere, but when they looked into all of those, it turned out not to be her. Police knew that the last person to be with was Paul Flores. And obviously, after that, she just simply vanished. So they go and speak to Paul, and you know, he has a black eye and some sort of scratches. When they asked him how he did that, he said that he had done it playing a game with his friends. Police asked Paul's friend to see whether that was the case, and his friend told the police that actually he had those marks before they played the game, so that wasn't, you know, a result of like a basketball hitting you in the face or something like that. Then he decided to tell the police that, you know, he actually did it fixing his stereo, and he smacked his sort of eye into it, I guess. I don't really know. Oh, I believe he actually said that he hit it off a steering wheel or something like that. I don't really know. He said that he said the initial story because he didn't want to seem fishy, and yet don't you think lying about it and then changing your story later would seem more fishy? I mean, come on. Apparently a lot of students had noticed that Paul had these injuries coincidentally just after Kristin had gone missing, like the day after. Paul's roommate also came forward to say that he had asked Paul what had happened because obviously everyone knows that he was the last person to be known with her. And he replied with, "She's at home with my parents now," which struck me as seriously super odd. Why on earth would anybody say that? And it made a lot of people think that he was actually telling the truth, because just 2 days after Kristin had gone missing, not a literal ton, but a lot of concrete was poured in the back garden of Paul's family home, and a lot of people do believe that her body was put in that concrete. Police went ahead and offered Paul a lie detector test, and he agreed to it, but then he delayed it like a billion times. The police had basically had enough of him. They pulled him in and was like, right, we're doing this lie detector test, and then, he refused. He didn't want to do it anymore. But he did decide to do like another interview, and so it lasted about 90 minutes, I believe. In this interview, apparently, I haven't seen it myself, but people have said that it was clear that Paul looked like he was trying to protect himself, like by his stance and his behavior and things like that, and in his body language, he like curled up his body. And then at one point, the people who have watched this have said that it looked like he was going to tell the authorities something, like he had something that he needed to get off his chest. And then one of the police officers asked him one more question, and apparently that completely set him off. I don't know what it was. I don't know whether it made him angry or what, but his body language changed completely. He like sat upright and then said to the police, "If you're so smart, tell me where the body is." Seriously? Why would an innocent person ever in a million years say that? I do not understand. Her case got flip-flopped around a little bit. It got handed to a few different places, but eventually it was handed over to the San Luis Obispo Sheriff's Department, where they could properly look into it. And this was about 6 weeks after she actually went missing. So this police department, after, only having the case for like a few hours, they brought in cadaver dogs. They took them around 128 Santa Luisa Hall, and that was actually Paul's dorm room. Apparently they brought in a couple of cadaver dogs, which both did exactly the same thing. Paul's roommate lived on the right hand side of the room, he lived on the left. They go over to the left side immediately and like mark sort of at the bottom of his bed. They took his mattress in as evidence. Apparently they brought the dogs in again to the same room, and they did exactly the same thing. Alerted to the same room again. People thought that maybe this could be a break in the case. They're alerting to basically a dead body being on Paul's side of the room. He was the last person known to be with Kristin. He's acting weird, saying all those strange things. So maybe it could finally be a break in the case, and yet they didn't get any evidence from it at all. And that was because campus police had allowed Paul's room to be cleaned and sanitized. I've seen that it was because it was coming up to the end of the year, and I've also seen that it could have been because they just didn't want sort of this horrible event putting a black mark against the university, and they just wanted to get it over and done with and clean the room. I don't really know, but yeah, they cleaned the room, and so probably that's why they didn't get any evidence from it. Now, the police's first search of Paul's family home happened on the 15th of July in 1996. When they searched his father Ruben's home, after the roommate's comment basically of her being there, they found multiple articles of Kristin's disappearance hidden under a mattress, but nothing really much else, to be honest. It was said that they also didn't really pay attention. The officers, they just kind of walked in and back out again, and they didn't really look around too much. They also found out that his mother also had another room that she rented out. At the time that they found this out, It wasn't being rented by anyone, and so that was their second search, and they brought in cadaver dogs. A witness also came forward who lived close by that rented house and said that one night he was looking out of the window and he sees Paul and somebody else. They seem to be digging holes, putting something heavy in, and then pouring concrete in. Now, I may have got that slightly wrong. I'm not sure which house that actually was, whether it was the rented one or whether it was like the father's one where the concrete was, because I didn't think there was any concrete in the rented house. So I may have got that wrong, and I apologise if I have. Please let me know if that's the case. A few months later, they did actually get a renter in that house, and this renter was cleaning out like her car, and whilst doing so, she actually found this earring in the driveway. It had something red on it that actually looked like blood, so she called the police and it was taken into evidence. Kristin's parents said that it sounded like her favourite pair of earrings, but when they actually went down to the police station to identify it as actually hers, you know, the police had lost it. It went missing. And so nobody knows what happened to it after that. They were pretty certain that it was her earring, but they just never got to look at it, and it was never sent for testing because it was gone. The third search took place on the 20th of June in 2000, but the issue that they had with that is that the warrant they had did not allow them to dig up the garden. All of this basis was that she was potentially in that concrete in the garden, and yet the warrant did not allow them to dig up that. I do not know why. I have seen rumours that possibly it was because they didn't want to pay for damages if they didn't find anything. But I don't know. I don't know whether that's the case, whether that's just a rumour or what. I don't get why they didn't dig up the garden if that was their suspicion that she was in there. But they didn't, and so what else can I say on that? In May of 2002, was finally declared as legally deceased. Now we jump forward a bunch of years. On the 6th of September in 2016, the police announced that they were investigating a new lead. Cadaver dogs that were with the FBI were brought in. Apparently they spent 4 days excavating these different sites. Some were inclusive of the university, and after 3 days items were apparently found at the various different sites that they had dug up or something like that, and then these items were then being analysed to see whether they could find any connection in her case. Then in April of 2020, Los Angeles Times reported that a search warrant was issued and served for the home of Paul Flores in San Pedro, California. It was reported that numerous items of interest were found in that search. However, it wasn't released what was found, obviously to protect the case. The main theory in the case was that night Paul Flores had probably took her back to his dorm room. He had tried to force himself on her. She probably rebuffed him, which made him angry, and he ended up murdering her, most likely in a fit of rage at her refusal of him. He then tried to cover it up and got his father involved, Ruben, who helped him dispose of her body, because at the end of the day that's his son, and I don't know, I don't know. He wanted to protect him. Not that you should protect a murderer, obviously, but, you know. Regardless of that, put her in the garden and lay the concrete on top. That is the theory. In March of 2021, search warrants were once more issued for Paul Flores' home, but it was his family home this time in Arroyo Grande. I've probably said that wrong, I apologise. This search included cadaver dogs and also radar technology, and police found evidence during this search too. So over the years, they really have tried with this case. They have not given up. They have literally been, oops, of course I've done that again, searching and searching, and, you know, doing all of these things that they could, bringing in cadaver dogs. They want to get whoever did this to serve the justice. And Paul has been the only suspect in her case for a very long time. The police have done like 48 sort of search warrants over Paul and things like that, including wiretraps and GPS tracking. Because of all these different things that they had found over the years, and all this evidence that came to light, an evidentiary hearing was announced to take place in her case. During this, a witness, Jennifer, came forward and said that back in 1996, Paul had told her that he had taken care of Kristin, and that she never actually told anyone because she was scared for her life. Now, what I neglected to mention about Paul, which I should have done earlier, but there we go. A lot of people around, a lot of women felt like he was a creep. He was always pushing himself into places that he didn't belong. People didn't want him around. He was always trying to get into these relationships with women that just didn't want him. He was a very, very strange guy, and they didn't like to be around him. And so, you know, she was scared of him. She felt like he was a bit of a weirdo, and she was scared for her life. She didn't want to tell anyone about that. She also said that he told her that he had put Kristin's body under a ramp in a skateboard park for some period of time. 2 cadaver dogs that they brought in displayed a change of behaviour around the deck of Reuben, where the concrete had been poured and the deck was laid on top of. Archaeologists, along with their sort of groundbreaking radar, surveyed underneath this deck, and they found this anomaly that was the size of what they said a human body. The soil under the deck also tested positive for blood. They didn't actually find any DNA, but they said that it was reasonable to assume that she had actually been buried there at one point. A result of all of this, along with all of the other evidence that they collected and much, much more than what I have said, the judge deemed that there was sufficient evidence for a trial against Paul Flores in the murder case. On the 13th of April in 2021, Paul Flores, at the age of 44, and Reuben, who was 80 years old at this point, were both arrested 25 years after that same day. Paul was named the prime suspect and faces charges of murder, whilst Reuben faces charges of access to written murder. So they do believe that he helped cover it up for his son, helped hide her body. On the 20th of April 2021, it was announced by a prosecutor that they believed Kristin's body has been buried beneath the deck of Reuben's home, but had recently been removed. Obviously, if they're getting suspicious and things like that, you know, they're gonna try and move the body, aren't they? A judge claimed that it's reasonable to believe that Reuben currently knows the location of his body, of the remains which have yet to be found. I believe Paul is in jail without bond, and Reuben has been released on bond. The judge has claimed that he believes Reuben, whilst out on bail, will still continue to try and protect his son. So basically this case is still ongoing. And honestly, after all these years, I really do hope that if it is proven that Paul did this, that he will finally serve the justice that he deserves after taking away from a family. It's been 25 years now. I truly, truly hope that if he is guilty, which obviously he is the only suspect, he is their prime suspect, they have all this evidence against him, all these weird things that he said, he was the last one to be seen with her, it's looking likely that it was him. Obviously, I'm not blaming anyone until, like, a jury finds them guilty, because that is not my place. But, you know, all of the evidence sort of points to him. And so, if he did it, he stole Kristin's life away and got away with it for 25 years. So, yeah, just again, I'm not blaming him, but everything's kind of pointing to him. So, maybe if this is the case as well, they will finally reveal where the body is and a family can finally lay it to rest. Again, all dependent on whether he did it. My heart truly goes out to the family. You know, they've suffered for so many years. The one thing I do sort of really implore about this case is that the police never ever gave up. Like, sometimes cases go cold and they just put it on the back burner and shut it and don't look at it for years. But this one, you know, over the years they've done so much to try and find the evidence and try and put together the case that they need. And I find that amazing. Like, the determination of it is really, really good. But yeah, keep your eyes and ears open on what happens with this case. We'll see what trial brings when it eventually comes to light. And obviously, I will put like a pin on it or something like that on this video if I find any more information in the future to see how the trial goes, I guess. That's the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, please give me a big thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for similar content. Anyway, guys, that's all I have today on the case of Kristin Smart. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!